I was lying in the snow, paralyzed from the waist down, and my father was screaming at me to transfer $2,000 for my brother's cracked phone screen before he'd let the paramedics load me into the ambulance. That's not where this story starts, but it's where everything finally made sense. The paramedic, her name was Sarah, she looked at my father like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. And when they ran that MRI at the hospital, when the doctor pulled up those images, she turned to my parents and said, "You better call a lawyer, because this scan shows a lot more than just today's fall. Multiple healed fractures. Years of them. A pattern so clear that even my parents couldn't talk their way out of it." But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up there, you need to understand the hierarchy. In my family, Brandon was royalty, and I was the help. We'd arrived at this remote mountain cabin 24 hours earlier. Late afternoon, sun already dropping behind the peaks. The driveway was pure black ice, steep, treacherous, the kind that makes your stomach drop just looking at it. I parked my 10-year-old sedan at the bottom and said a prayer as I pulled the emergency brake. Brandon's luxury SUV, paid for entirely by my parents, was parked right at the top, engine running to keep the climate control perfect. "Rachel, grab the black duffel," my dad shouted from the porch. The black duffel. That's what he called it. Like it was some important piece of equipment. It was a gaming console wrapped in a hoodie, but in my father's mind, everything Brandon touched was enterprise-grade technology. I grabbed it along with 2 suitcases of food and my mother's vanity case. The wind cut through my thin coat like it had a personal grudge. At the top of the stairs, Brandon stood there with a selfie stick, panning across the snowy horizon. Grinding in the mountains, he was saying to his phone, capturing that alpha energy. This is what separates winners from the rest. He had maybe 12 viewers. I knew because I'd checked his account that morning. But he talked like he was addressing millions. My boots slipped on the ice. I caught myself, gasping, nearly dropping everything. "Watch it," my mom snapped. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Brandon. "Brandon, zip up. You can't afford to get sick right before the big launch." There was no launch. There was no company. Brandon was 30 years old, unemployed, living in their basement, and spending his days playing video games while filming himself talking about crypto and market plays. But standing there, watching them huddle around him like he was made of glass, I finally understood what was really happening. It wasn't just favoritism. It was survival. Their survival. They needed Brandon to be the genius tech bro because if he wasn't, if he was just a grown man with no job and no prospects, then they were failures as parents. They needed the lie. And for the lie to work, they needed someone to absorb all the reality. Someone to carry the bags. Someone to pay the bills. Someone to make the lie look real. That was me. I was the trash can for their delusions. That night cemented it. I'd paid the deposit for this Airbnb, $2,000, non-refundable, squeezed out of my savings account. But they gave me the pull-out couch in the drafty living room. Brandon got the master suite with the jacuzzi. He needed headspace to visualize the market. Dinner was worse. We sat around this rustic wooden table while Brandon held court, waving his fork around, talking about double bottom reversals and leveraging liquidity pools and diamond hands. It was complete nonsense. I work in logistics. I manage supply chains for a tri-state shipping fleet. I know what leverage actually means. I know what liquidity is. Brandon was just regurgitating buzzwords he'd heard on TikTok. "That's incredible, son," my dad said, nodding like Brandon had just explained quantum physics. He looked at me. "You see, Rachel? You work hard for pennies. Brandon works smart for millions." I set down my water glass. "Actually, if the liquidity is locked, how are you paying for gas tomorrow? You asked me for $50 in the driveway." The silence was immediate. My mother slammed her hand on the table. "Don't do that. Don't bring your petty jealousy into his flow. He's building an empire and you're worrying about gas money. You have no vision, Rachel. That's why you'll always be an assistant." "I'm not an assistant. I'm a logistics manager." But I didn't bother correcting her. I looked at them, my father beaming at a fraud, my mother attacking the only person in the room with an actual paycheck, and I realized something. In their story, I was the villain. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I kept trying to turn on the lights. I went to sleep on that lumpy couch listening to the wind howl, completely unaware that by sunrise, everything would shatter. The next morning, I woke up shivering. The fire had died hours ago. It was 7 a.m., and the cabin felt like a freezer. I made coffee in the kitchen. Through the sliding glass door, I could see the deck. Overnight, the snow had melted and refrozen into black ice. Slick. Deadly. Brandon walked in, already dressed in brand new snow gear, tag still on, phone in hand. "Morning, team," he whispered to his screen. "We're up early. Grinding while the competition sleeps. Going to do a quick cold plunge mental reset on the deck. Watch this." He pointed at the door. "Rachel, grab your coffee. Come out here. I need a second angle. It's freezing, Brandon. And the deck is solid ice. Don't be a buzzkill," he snapped. The fake streamer voice dropped for a second, showing the real Brandon underneath. "Just stand by the railing. It's for the content. It's for the brand." I sighed. It was easier to comply than to argue. That was the pattern I'd learned. Don't fight. Don't make waves. Just do what they want, and maybe the weekend would end without another lecture about my attitude problem. I put on my boots and stepped outside. The cold hit like a punch. The deck was coated in ice so clear it looked like glass. I moved carefully to the railing, holding my coffee with both hands, my breath visible in the freezing air. "Okay, I'm here," I said, turning my back to the stairs. "What do you want me to do?" "Just stand there and look natural," Brandon said, positioning himself behind a wooden pillar. "Act like you're enjoying the view." I turned to look at the trees. The mountains were beautiful, I'll give them that. Silent and peaceful in a way that felt almost sacred. Then I heard it. A shuffle of boots. A giggle. "Prank time," Brandon whispered. I didn't hear him move. I just felt the shove. Hard. Two-handed. Right between my shoulder blades. Boo! But he miscalculated. The ice, his footing, everything. As he shoved me, his boots lost traction. He slipped, and his weight drove into me harder than he'd planned. I flew forward. My feet went out from under me. I hit the railing with my lower back, the sickening wet crunch that echoed through the woods. And then I flipped over it. The world spun. Sky, trees, snow, all blurring together. I landed hard on the stairs below. My body twisted in a way bodies aren't supposed to twist. I slid down 3 steps and stopped in a heap. Silence. Just wind in the trees. Then from above, no, 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 no. It wasn't concern. It was panic, but not about me. My iPhone! My charts! I lay there staring at the gray sky. The pain hadn't hit yet. Just the strange cold numbness spreading from my waist down. I tried to move my legs. Nothing. My brain sent the signal. My body didn't answer. Above me, Brandon was scrambling. "Mom! Dad! Help!" The door flew open. Heavy footsteps across the deck. "Brandon, are you okay?" My mother's voice, shrill with panic. "She made me drop it," Brandon wailed. She flailed around and hit my hand. "Look at the screen. It's shattered." "Oh my God," my dad gasped. "Is the data backed up? Is the wallet safe?" I tried to call out. "Mom." My voice came out as a croak. "Dad." They didn't look over the railing. They were huddled around Brandon. 3 heads bowed over a piece of glass and metal. "It's flickering," Brandon sobbed. "I can't see the graphs. I'm losing money right now." "It's okay, son," my dad said. "We'll fix it. We'll get it fixed immediately." I was lying in the snow, unable to feel my toes, and they hadn't even looked to see where I'd fallen. The sound of my spine hitting that wood, they never even heard it. It was drowned out by the tragedy of a cracked phone screen. When I woke up, I must have blacked out for a minute. My parents were rushing down the stairs. For one stupid, childish second, I felt relief. They're coming. They're finally coming to help. But they didn't stop. They stepped over me. Literally stepped over my body, like I was a branch on a hiking trail. My father's boot landed inches from my face as he hurried past to where Brandon was kneeling on the ice, cradling his phone like it was a dying child. My mother skirted around my legs without a glance. "Let me see," my dad demanded. "Is the screen responsive?" "It's dead," Brandon wailed. "Look at the spiderweb crack. It's right over the biometric sensor." "You clumsy idiot." My mother wasn't yelling at Brandon. She was yelling at me. She turned, her face twisted, not with worry, but with rage. "Look what you did, Rachel. You flailed around like a maniac and hit his hand. You ruined the vibe. You ruined the whole weekend." "Mom," I wheezed. I can't feel my legs." "Oh, stop it. Stop trying to deflect. You always do this. You break something valuable and then play the victim so we can't be mad at you. It's manipulative." The word hit harder than the fall. Manipulative. That's what I was to them. Not hurt. Not their daughter lying injured in the snow. Just manipulative. "Carol, look at this," my dad interrupted, completely ignoring me. "The chassis is bent. This isn't a screen replacement. This is total unit loss. Do you know what a limited edition titanium model costs?" I was midstream, Brandon shouted. I had 1,200 viewers. They saw the feed cut. "My brand is going to tank." He had 12 viewers. Not 1,200. 12. But the number didn't matter. What mattered was the hierarchy. I was lying there in the freezing snow, and I finally understood. It wasn't that they hated me. It was simpler than that. I wasn't valuable. Brandon was the investment. The future. The protagonist. His phone, his jacket, his ego, those were sacred relics. I was just infrastructure. Like a shelf or a rug. And if a shelf breaks and damages the crown, you don't mourn the shelf. You curse it for failing. "Dad," I tried again, fear driving my voice stronger. "My back." It crunched. "Please." He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. Assessing. Like he was calculating the cost of dealing with me. "Get up, Rachel. Stop making a scene. The neighbors will see." "I can't get up." "Stop faking. You're just embarrassed because you know you owe your brother a new phone." "Call 911, I whispered. "No." My mother's voice was immediate. "We are not having sirens and flashing lights up here. We don't have the insurance coverage for an ambulance ride just because you bruised your tailbone. We'll help you to the car later. Right now, we need to get Brandon inside. He's freezing." "My hands are shaking," Brandon whimpered. "I can't feel my fingers." "Oh, honey, let's get you to the fire," my mom cooed, wrapping her arm around him. My dad helped Brandon to his feet and led him toward the cabin, supporting him like he'd been the one who fell. "Don't move, Rachel," he called back. "Think about how you're going to pay for this." The door shut. The cold seeped deeper. My fingers were going numb. I could see my breath in short, panicked puffs. And I understood then that if I waited for them to care, I would die out there. So I reached for my phone, the one thing Brandon didn't have right now, and called 911 myself. My hands shook as I dialed. The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? I fell. I can't feel my legs. I'm outside in the snow. I gave them the address, the injury, the gate code. My voice stayed surprisingly steady. I can't feel my legs, I repeated. I'm alone outside. I wasn't really alone. Through the glass door, I could see my family in the warm cabin. My mom was making hot cocoa. Steam rose from 3 mugs on the counter. Brandon was wrapped in a blanket on the couch. My dad was on his phone, probably looking up repair costs. Like nothing was wrong. Like their daughter wasn't lying in the snow 30 feet away. When the sirens arrived, it felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes. My father exploded out of the cabin. "What the hell did you do? Do you know how embarrassing this is? The neighbors are going to think we're trash. They're going to think we can't handle our own family." A paramedic named Sarah cut him off. She was maybe 5'3", but she moved with absolute authority. "Sir, step back." She knelt beside me, her hands gentle but efficient, checking my vitals. "Can you feel this?" She touched my foot. "Nothing. I can't feel my legs," I said. My voice cracked. Saying it out loud to someone who actually cared made it real. Her expression changed. Professional concern replaced routine assessment. She radioed immediately. "Possible spinal injury. Patient has no sensation below the waist. Requesting life flight to County General." Life flight? My mother's voice was shrill. She'd followed my father out. "Do you know what that costs?" She just fell. "She's being dramatic. This is what she does for attention." Sarah ignored her completely. She stabilized my neck with a brace, her movements careful and practiced. "You're going to be okay," she said quietly to me. "We've got you." I wanted to cry. A stranger was showing me more care in 30 seconds than my parents had in 30 years. My father stepped in front of the stretcher as they tried to load me. "She's not going anywhere until we discuss payment. Rachel, you need to transfer $2,000 to Brandon's account right now. For the phone. Before you leave. I'm serious." Sarah stood up slowly. She was a small woman, but in that moment, she seemed 10 feet tall. "Sir, if you do not step away from this stretcher right now, I will have you arrested for obstructing emergency transport. This is your only warning. You can't threaten me. I'm her father. I have rights. Try me." Something in her voice made him move. They loaded me into the ambulance. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of my parents. They weren't watching me. They were already heading back inside, my mother's arm around Brandon's shoulders. At the hospital, while I lay on a gurney in the ER waiting for imaging, my parents arrived. I heard them before I saw them, arguing with the admissions desk about deductibles and co-pays and whether the ambulance was really necessary. Not about me. Not asking how I was. Just money. Dr. Hayes came in an hour later. She was young, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and tired shoulders. "We've got your scans back," she said, pulling up a chair. "You have a burst fracture at L2. That's your lumbar spine. It's serious. You're lucky you're not permanently paralyzed." The word lucky felt absurd. But I understood what she meant. "But I will walk again?" My voice was small. "With time and physical therapy, yes. You'll need surgery to stabilize the fracture, and recovery will be months, not weeks. But you should regain full function." She paused. "But Rachel, I need to ask you something. These other fractures." She pulled up the images on a screen and pointed. "Your ribs here, and here. Your left wrist. Your collarbone. All healed, but all within the last few years. Some of them show signs of having been untreated or improperly treated. Can you tell me what happened?" I stared at the screen. At the evidence of falls I'd written off. Accidents I'd minimized. Injuries I'd been told were my fault for being clumsy, for not watching where I was going, for making things difficult. The rib fracture from when Brandon accidentally shoved me down the basement stairs during an argument. The wrist from when my father grabbed me too hard and yanked me toward him. The collarbone from another fall that I couldn't quite remember the details of because they'd convinced me it was nothing. My voice cracked. I didn't know they were all there. I mean, I knew I'd gotten hurt, but they said it wasn't serious. That I was fine. Dr. Hayes's expression shifted. Professional but firm. "Rachel, this pattern is consistent with long-term physical abuse. I'm required by law to report this to the authorities." Before I could respond, before my parents in the waiting room could deny anything, 2 police officers walked into my room. "We need to speak with the family of Rachel Morrison," one said. And that's when I found out that Brandon had live-streamed everything. The fall. The aftermath. My parents stepping over me to check a phone. My father demanding money while I lay paralyzed. All of it captured in high definition and broadcast to his 12 viewers. And those 12 viewers? They'd recorded it. They'd posted it everywhere. Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. The internet had already seen it. Within hours, it went viral. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was real. Because people recognized something in it, the scapegoat, the golden child, the parents who'd invested everything in a delusion. Millions of views. News outlets picked it up. Woman left paralyzed while family prioritizes broken phone. Brandon was arrested for assault. My parents were investigated for neglect and abuse, with the MRI evidence backing up years of a pattern they couldn't explain away. Their friends saw the video. Their church saw it. Their neighbors, the ones my father was so worried about, saw it. The reputation they'd spent decades building collapsed in a single day. And me? I didn't pay the $2,000. I hired a lawyer instead and sued them for medical expenses, pain and suffering, and years of documented abuse. Months later, I was in physical therapy, relearning how to walk. 3 times a week, small steps, literal and figurative. One day my father called. The first time in months. Rachel, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. You can't just cut us off. Forgive us. We can move past this. I held the phone and thought about all the times I'd wanted to hear those words. All the times I'd hoped they'd see me, really see me. But I'd learned something in those months of recovery. Family isn't supposed to make you beg for basic human decency. You aren't my family, I said. You were my employers. Bad ones. And I quit. I hung up. The next day in therapy, I took 15 steps without the walker. It hurt. My back ached. My legs trembled. But it was my pain. My choice. My life. Some debts can't be paid. Some people can't be saved. And sometimes surviving means walking away from the people who taught you to crawl. Thanks for listening, and if this story hit home for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when the people who should have seen it never did. The strongest people aren't the ones who never fall, they're the ones who get back up after being pushed.